Hello, my name is Marcus Catani, and Erin asked me if I could have a look at her risk register and assist with some engagement with her stakeholders. So I'm not sure exactly who they are, but I just like to go through a few things which may help. So, my name is Marcus Catani, and I'm a researcher and associate professor in occupational health and safety at Edith Cowan University, and in particular the ECU Mars Centre, which is a government funded research centre, and my focus is on communicating risk. Okay, so one of the things that is important in this case is that the organisation's toleration of risk drives performance improvement. So, if we understand what the toleration of risk is, and we put some effort into addressing toleration of risk, we can actually do quite a lot to improve injuries. So what I want to go through is a little bit about what that means and what you and Erin can do to assist the improvement in performance in your organisation. So what I've found through data analysis is that there's several tools that we often use to towards injury prevention, and I found that they're incredibly useful in structuring an organisation's approach. And I'm going to go through some of those, but they're the risk register, incident investigations, and then actions and action management. If you do at least those three things, I think then you've got a really good chance of improving your safety performance. And I'm going to show you now a little bit about why I've come to that conclusion. The research that I've been doing has taken some very large data sets from mining and construction companies, hundreds of thousands of reports of information, and we've had a look to see what we can find out in that data. And what we found is that those three tools and the data they collect are very useful to address the level of injury risk. And this is important because the number of injuries in Australia, particularly for fatal injuries, isn't reducing very quickly. In fact, there's a lot of frustration about the number of injuries. So around about 200 fatalities and about 139,000 serious injuries. So that's sort of 7 or more days. So what we found is that if we understand the toleration of risk, then we can do something about it. And I'm going to go through that in quite a lot of detail in a moment. But from a leadership point of view, the toleration of risk is the level of risk at which the organisation changes its behaviour. In other words, something's happened and you decide you don't want that to happen again. Information that we can get from the data then tells us a little bit about how the organisation responds to these. So let's have a look at a couple of things. So for example, here's the number of fatalities across the whole of Australia over the last 15 years or so. And you can see there's been a gradual reduction in the number of fatalities, but then it's plateaued out. And this is causing a lot of frustration. So the information and the systems that we've used to prevent fatalities, such as the OHS management system, have done a really good job in managing most of our risk. So we mustn't stop that. We've got to keep going on that. But then what do we need to do differently to address this bit? And this plateau of performance is quite common in large organizations. So the search is on for ways in which we can improve. And what we think we can do with this research is to advise people on how to approach it. And it all comes down to leadership. What we've seen over and over again through the data is that we need leadership involved, and I'll show you why. One of the reasons why is that the existing ways that we're monitoring our performance doesn't give us the definition that we need. So here's an example of how we often go about defining what we're going to do to improve performance. So this is data that's come from the Safe Work Australia website. So it's if you go to Safe Work Australia, they've got an amazing data warehouse, and you can do all sorts of graphs and things to have a look at the data in different industry types or different groups of workers. So remember the last slide, we just saw a plateau in performance. Let's have a look at what's going on in Western Australia. So most fatalities are males. Most fatalities are occurring through vehicles, and most of the people that are being killed at work are sort of middle-aged. So we can say then that we should focus on males driving vehicles in their middle age. Well, unfortunately, that's been the same for the last 10 years. So we need to do something differently. Let's have a look at this thing that I spoke a little bit about, toleration, and then see what we can do differently. Because what we've seen is that we can start having a look at incidents and how we manage incidents, and then put in place some controls. So for example, let's think about leadership. So we have an incident in our organization, and we call that event 1, and nothing really happens because nobody's really that interested in it. It doesn't trigger any response. So therefore we can say that our toleration is above that line, that event 1. So there's a gap here. So anything that comes under this line is tolerated. Anything that's above this line is not tolerated. So, okay, things progress and as they were. And then bang, we have event number 2. And someone calls Erin in and says, "What's going on, Erin? This is no good. We've got a level of risk here that we don't tolerate. We don't want this happening again." And so therefore what we've said then is now we've changed our behavior because we've taken some action. We've called in Erin to say something's going wrong. We don't tolerate that. So now our toleration has come down. We're going to do something about it. So we're going to investigate that incident, and we're going to put in place some controls, and we'll monitor those controls to make sure that we have done something to prevent this gap in performance between our event and our toleration. So that's a leadership decision. Leadership have decided that they're going to not tolerate that. And this is really important, because in some instances we are tolerating it and in others we're not. So you can see how important it is for leadership to understand what's going on in their or part of the organization, put in place controls, put in place that toleration of risk, make sure that everybody in their team understands the toleration of risk. Now, there's nothing new about this. This is the definition of risk that comes from the International Standard on Risk Management, the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So effect is our consequence. What could go wrong? What's happened? Uncertainty. Well, we're all uncertainty managers. We're all here to make sure that what we're doing doesn't cause uncertainty. We want to remove uncertainty. And objectives in health and safety, our objective is we don't want to hurt people. Okay, so nothing new so far in what I've said. It's all linked back to this definition of risk. So what do I suggest you do? Well, first of all, make sure that everybody understands the toleration of risk in the business. One of the easiest ways to understand the toleration of risk is your risk matrix, because the risk matrix shows what is allowed. So that's green. Anything that's green, you're allowed to go ahead. If it's orange, you want to check that the controls are in place and make sure that people are aware of what they need to do. And red, we're not going to do any work that's in the red zone. Okay, so our risk matrix tells us about the organization's toleration of risk. As leaders, it's up to the leadership team to make sure that that toleration of risk is actually happening. So you do not allow people to work in the red zone. You check to make sure that the controls are in place if they're in the orange zone, and we're moving towards having everybody working in the green. Consequence. Well, consequence is the level of risk most likely from that task or that situation. Quite often that's very difficult for us to manage. We can eliminate it maybe. And effectiveness, as I've said, we're all effectiveness managers. It's up to us to ensure that the controls that we've agreed on are actually in place. Okay? If they're not in place, then we're not being effective. So, my suggestion is make sure that you understand your risk register. And here's the risk register that Erin's passed me, and it's fine. There's a bit of missing information though. What we need, or what Erin needs and what you need, is to get to know this risk register, because these are the things that have been agreed or need to be agreed in the organization to make sure that people don't get hurt. And it comes down to the leadership team understanding what the level of risk is, and then what are we going to do about it? What's acceptable? What will you not tolerate in your business? So have a look at that, see what you think, and I look forward to hearing from Erin about how it goes launching her risk register. But it's an excellent resource.